The mining indaba is taking place in Cape Town this week, and a key player in this arena is Canada, with 169 mining companies already operating in Africa. We cross over now to Cape Town to speak to Ungad Chadda, Senior Vice President of the Toronto Stock Exchange, about opportunities in accessing the Canadian financial markets. Mr. Chadda, thank you so much for joining us today. The Toronto Stock Exchange, or TSX, and the TSXV, which is the venture issuers side of things, welcomed 71 new international listings last year, compared to the previous record of 49 in 2008. So we have seen the Toronto Stock Exchange go from strength to strength. What role did Africa play in the new listings last year?
Well, we had a great number of companies, somewhere in the under 20, about 19 that came in from Africa. But we continue to have a strong base here. Approximately 190 companies that are here exploring with projects, over 700 projects in Africa. So it's continued to be a strong region for us to develop, and we're pleased to be here at Indaba again this year.
Well, looking at the TSXV, it exceeded 2009 figures in all measures, with 185, as I mentioned, new issuers, including 142 IPOs. Total financing raised during the year increased by over 96% as well. And that's over the 2009 period. So clearly 2010 was a fantastic year. Again, looking at the role that Africa played with this, how much interest was shown by African companies wanting to raise capital on the TSX?
Yeah, well, the numbers this year were strong. In 2010, we had close to $2 billion raised by our companies that are operating in Africa. So it was a strong number. I think if you look at the two-year number going back to 2009, it almost doubles. So it's a very strong year. So strong demand, both on the listings front, but also more importantly, billions of dollars raised that are going into projects in Africa to advance those exploration properties, but also to give back to communities in Africa, etc. So it's been quite a good piece of the puzzle for us. Well,
you are currently at the mining indaba. How much interest is being shown by those new companies, exploration companies? And this is really what the TSX has been focusing on for many years. It has been said that your exchange is very bold in issuing capital and perhaps going where many fear to tread.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had, the conference has been a very well attended conference for us. We just hosted our informational event just now. I just came from there across town, and we had approximately 200 people out. I think the depth of the market through some of the companies that were there and telling their stories became very evident. We have been focused, Canada and TSX is a very international focus, that the teams on TSX listed companies travel the globe, and they're really fearless in terms of looking at where they can go across the globe, and they have a very deep knowledge and understanding of geology and the ability to finance these areas. So this is no different. We operate in all countries around the world. The demand right now for us to do more in Africa is building. I've got meetings all today and all tomorrow with new prospects looking to tap into the market. So we're very pleased.
Which parts of the markets are you focusing on right now? I mean, we've got copper breaching $10,000 a ton, hitting around $10,160 a ton or so. You've got tin sitting at record highs. You've got a lot of the underlying industrial metals doing relatively well. Platinum also looking relatively robust. And then you've got rare earths thrown into all of this as well. Tell us about what is really being shown, the interest that we see coming through from Africa.
Yeah, well, I mean, the very big percentage has been gold. I mean, very strong. I would say on the TSX stock list, when you look at all the companies by metals, about 40% of the mining franchise on the TSX currently is focused on gold. But copper, obviously, a huge play and up and coming. We've seen a lot of interest there. And rare earths for sure. There is also, some iron ore here. It's very interesting. We're seeing a little bit of that. So across those, but those are sort of the leading ones that are coming up right now. But really, I would say, because we deal with end-to-end companies, we'll deal with the nano-cap companies that are looking for small financing, right up to the mega caps, that we actually have to cover all the various types of minerals. But the commodity wave has continued to blow in the right direction for us, and we continue to offer our services to the world, and it seems to be sort of well accepted so far.
Mr. Chadda, let's take you back to the crisis. And in 2008, we saw the TSX dropping over 30%. So massive losses there. No surprise coming to the fore, given the fact that commodity prices were under significant pressure. We also saw money drying up. Many were very scared and afraid to go into the market. But how do you measure success and failure in the markets, given the fact that we have seen a flurry of uranium companies and then a sharp drop off? How many fail? How many succeed across the board, across various resources?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have specific stats at hand, but I can tell you our position and how we approach it at the exchange. I mean, what we do is try to strip out the regulatory risk through all the background checks and detailed due diligence and listing standards that we have, so that what's left for the investor is the business risk and the investment risk. So we really focus on making sure there's a very, very safe, extremely well-regulated market for junior companies and for senior companies between the TSX Venture Exchange and the Toronto Stock Exchange. So, then when we measure how successful we are, we very much like to look at what types of capital have been raised, what type of liquidity has been offered to companies, and what type of graduations. That's when a venture exchange company graduates to the Toronto Stock Exchange. And just a few stats. So post-recession, 2009, the TSX markets raised $65 billion, which was a record that we've, all-time record since the exchange opened its doors about 158 years ago. Secondly, this year we've had a mining record as well in terms of financings, in terms of increase in financing, and our liquidity increases in trading over the last 5 years have been very, very strong. So we look to those types of things and not just the investment return and how the index is doing. So on all those measures, we seem to be firing on all cylinders, certainly from a commodities and resource and oil and gas perspective.
We've looked at the past numbers, and as we mentioned, a great 2010. What are you expecting for 2011? And this, of course, on the backdrop of increased demand and very little supply, especially, as I mentioned earlier, the likes of rare earths, gold production in South Africa coming under pressure. So we are looking for new streams coming through for commodities. And also, what kind of role will Africa play in the overall success of the TSX and the TSXV? How much money are you planning to pump into Africa this year?
Yeah, well, listen, I can't really give forward-looking statements and be guessing at a lot of that. So suffice to say that, I mean, the theme right now with the growth, in the Asian market and the demand, et cetera, for raw materials and supply to supply those economies, that theme continues to be a very strong theme for us, and we are taking advantage of that, and our services and deep financing pool for resources continues to be tapped. So we hope for much of the same of that going forward in 2011.